Hi, I'm David Partika, and I created CSSBurner as a tool that anyone could use to rapidly scan, minify, and optimize their CSS style sheets. Now, there are several options that are available to someone who uses CSSBurner, but today, what I'm going to focus on for the purposes of this introductory video is I'm going to focus on the scan option and what exactly it can offer to a user of CSSBurner. And the reason that scan is such a powerful option for this tool is that it allows you to pinpoint errors and warning level indicators for your style sheet, and warning being something that is, say, deprecated or just something you might want to take another look at, but it's not necessarily an error in your CSS. It allows you to pinpoint these errors and warnings very quickly, much more quickly than you would be able to manually, because as anyone knows who develops web and mobile applications, that style sheets, .css files become very large in a hurry, but they're very important as well to the final presentation because it plays a big part in what the end user sees in the user interface. So what we could do is just follow the instructions here for the text area, which tells us that to be able to start, we could paste our CSS or a URL, and the URL for a style sheet would be found by viewing the page source, going to a link for the CSS file, and then copying the link address, placing it into the text area like so. And I'm working locally, so you're just seeing local URLs. So we can do that, or we could paste our CSS directly into the text area, or we could drag our style sheet. So let's drag our style sheet directly into the text area. So what I'm going to do is take one of the style sheets, a public style sheet that I have saved. So let's take one from, how about the cooking channel? And so I've dragged it directly into my text area, and after a couple of seconds, 352 kilobytes of CSS has been pasted into our text area, which we can now scan. We would never be able to get the level of speed manually, as you'll see in a second, on 352 kilobytes, because what the power of CSSBurner, as I'll show you, is that it can go through now this entire style sheet looking for any settings or anything that we tell it to look for. It can go through that entire style sheet in a matter of seconds. So what I've told the backend to look for is I've told it to be cognizant of SVG and accelerated mobile page elements. I've also told it to alert us to warnings and to any CSS that could be optimized, and also to make sure that URLs for properties such as background image, to make sure that they actually exist, because you might have mistyped a character. Additionally, what we could do is we could click, if we have a file that we directly want to scan, we could click this checkbox here, but we're not going to do that today. And so now what we'll see is that 352 kilobytes can be scanned in what's going to be a matter of seconds. So we're processing here, and in less than 10 seconds, 352 kilobytes of CSS were scanned and reported for the presence of errors, warnings, and any code that could be optimized. So we see a beautified, formatted version of the style sheet with all the errors and warnings. And See that there's lots of rules here. They're all formatted. Now, how many rules do we have exactly? Well, we go to the bottom by clicking one of these options on the top. We see that there are over 2,800 rules. And we could go back to the top of the style sheet by clicking the scroll to top button here. Now, there is a list of errors. And we see that there are a total of 139 errors were found in this style sheet. Warnings, there were a total of 640. And optimizations, so code that could have been written more succinctly, 1,864 occurrences, and almost 25% of 352 kilobytes. So whatever 1/4 of that is, which is probably like 85 to 90 kilobytes, could have been, removed from this style sheet, which is very important because the size of a CSS file does affect the speed at which it will be, downloaded, so that the page can actually now be rendered for the end user. And rendering speed is very important because CSSBurner can ultimately help a user's style sheet for an application. It can help reduce the size and then help the application load more quickly. So we see that there are a series of errors, and let's just go to one of them. So let's take this number 6. Apparently, there is a property that the keyword, well, the property was expecting a valid keyword or length percentage, but an invalid keyword or length percentage was used. We could find out more about what these are, the definitions of keyword or length percentage, by clicking on these links if we were curious, or getting more information by going to the W3C document itself, which is linked here in the informational icon. But let's now just go to the error itself. So for some reason in this style sheet, margin, which is just expecting a keyword such as auto, or a length percentage, which is defined as a number followed by a unit, such as 0 pixels or 10 pixels. That wasn't the format that was followed here by whoever created this style sheet. And we see that the offending keyword here is this preset / spacing / space half, which is not valid for margin. Now, that's one way to access or to correlate the errors in the report with the what we see here in the action window. Another way is we can actually double click on the error or warning itself. And so here I clicked on the warning for font family. That it tells us, now this is not incorrect CSS, but it's something you might want to look at based on the W3C recommendation, which is here in this red box, that font family names, when there are spaces in the family names, there's a recommendation that the font family be quoted so that there's no ambiguity in the interpretation. So we see that Times New Roman here with spaces is not quoted. So that was flagged as a warning. Now, if I want to get the set of all the warnings, what I could do is, again, click on the paintbrush here, and then I could now navigate warning to warning by using the forward button, the right arrow, or if at any time I wanted to go back to the previous error, I could click the left arrow. If I want to go back to the first error, I could click on the all the way back arrows. And what I want to do now is I'd like to just look at some optimizations. Now, apparently there is some CSS that was not written in the most succinct manner that it could be written. So let's highlight these. and try to get an idea of what exactly went wrong here. Now there's a lot going on. There is a legacy color function. So RGBA is in the future not going to be used anymore. It's just at this point in time, W3C is just going to maintain RGBA for legacy reasons, but it's going to focus going forward on the RGB color function. Additionally, now what I'm looking here for is the optimization. The optimization is that, okay, so the first argument here, minus 180 degrees for the linear gradient function, you don't have to specify that because for linear gradient, to bottom, which is equivalent to 180 degrees or negative 180 degrees as the direction, that doesn't have to be specified. By default, the browser knows that if that is not present, that is the direction for a gradient. So that is, let's count, 4, 7, plus including the comma, that's 8 characters that did not have to be included in this particular rule. And so what we can do is we could go now rule to rule, and we can see that again was flagged, and this happened apparently for this particular style sheet. This happened a whole bunch of times. Minus 180 degrees. Let's try to find one. Can we find one that's not? No, it's just over and over again. So what we can do is we could rapidly scroll through this. Let's try to find one example of an optimization that was not for all of these look like they're negative 180, negative 180, negative 180 over and over again. But typically what we would do, let's go to the last rule. Let's try that. Let's try one more thing. Go all the way back. Okay, so no, just over and over again, this particular style sheet, the user was using minus 180 degrees, which did not have to be the case. And so it's just, this could have been removed from the rule and it would have been perfectly valid CSS. So that is, that's bulk in the file that does not need to be there. So we see that there are other optimizations. There are some repeated blocks of code, identical blocks. There's nth child selectors that could have been written more succinctly. For example, here 2n plus or minus 1 can be rewritten as odd. That's the same thing. So here's 4 characters that could have been written as odd. That would be 3 characters. That would save a character. Here is, we see that a coefficient of 1 is not necessary in the nth child rule. So that's 1 character that could have been chopped off the style sheet. So this is typically how you would use the scan feature. You would go through all of your bugs and your warnings, your optimizations, and you would change them as necessary. We could download the report now with some of these functions on the bottom. Additionally, in the future, I'm going to come up with a premium version in which, for more professional users, people who do web development for a living, and that's how they pay their bills, I'm going to make a premium version which would allow you to email your report if necessary, if you wanted to do that. The free version will allow you to print your report. So we see that a preview is being loaded here, and now everything that we saw previously is now printable. So we could have printed that if we wanted to. And that is the scan feature. As we can see here, there are more functions on the top. We could have statistically analyzed the CSS. We could have gone to the blog feature. We could have minified the CSS. If we wanted to just see CSSBurner in action before we started using it, we could have We could have looked at some samples, could have also updated our user preferences, but for now, what I wanted to do was show you this main feature, which is the scanning option. If we wanted to do so, you could have enabled full screen mode to be able to use up the whole screen and look at this this output, but we're not doing that today. Now, once we're done, we could press this reset button, which would allow us to now move on to the next style sheet that we'd like to scan, which would wipe out this entire window. So when we're done, we would click this. So let's do this. Now we're back to where we were at the beginning. So this is how you would use the scan button and the scan function for CSSBurner. So I hope that was very helpful. If you like what you saw, please just give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. Additionally, if you'd like to be informed in advance of what the latest developments for CSSBurner will be, you could subscribe for free to the CSSBurner newsletter. Just input your valid email address here and you'll subscribe for free. So what I'm going to do in the future is I'm going to explain to you more of the functionality in how you use CSSBurner, for example, for the statistical analysis or for minifying and for any other functionality that I come up with in the future. So stay tuned for that, and I hope you found this video helpful. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, and because I want this to be a helpful tool for users out there, and thanks for your time.